The sky over the alien city was always filled with lights. Tall towers reached into the clouds. Ships moved across the sky like glowing birds, and the streets below were alive with people laughing, talking, and living their lives. But in the middle of this busy city, there was a girl who never joined. She stayed in the shadows, silent and unseen, her small figure pressed against the cold stone walls, her eyes wide, always watching, always afraid. She was not like the others. She was different. Her skin carried strange markings. Her eyes were too large and too bright, and the people whispered when they saw her. They whispered words that cut deeper than any blade. Orphan. Cursed. Unwanted. The girl had no family. Her parents had vanished long ago. No one told her how or why. She only knew that one day she had woken up alone, and from that day she was left to survive in the dark corners of the city. She carried a heavy silence inside her, her voice almost forgotten. She never spoke to others, and when someone tried to speak to her, she would lower her head, tremble, and run away, her heart beating like it would break. Every night she would return to a small, empty room, a place that hardly felt like home. The walls cracked, the floor cold, the window broken. Through it she could see the lights of the city, lights that belonged to people who were not afraid, people who had friends, people who were normal. But she was not normal. She believed she was broken, and so she sat in the darkness, hugging her knees, whispering to herself, trying to stop the tears that always came. Her biggest fear was not monsters or storms. Her biggest fear was people. She feared their eyes, their laughter, their voices, because every time she remembered the voices of the children who had bullied her, calling her names, chasing her, throwing stones, telling her she should disappear, she felt like the pain was still happening even years later. So she stayed hidden. In the day she moved like a shadow, never letting her steps be heard, and at night she cried quietly, her tears leaving marks on her pale cheeks. No one cared, no one knocked on her door, no one asked if she was all right. She lived in silence, in fear, in a prison built from her own mind, but deep inside her heart, a small light still lived, a tiny hope. Sometimes she dreamed of someone who might smile at her, someone who might not laugh, someone who might say her name gently, but every morning she woke up and told herself it was impossible. The city around her was changing. New people arrived every week. Ships from faraway worlds landed on the starport, and among these people were humans, tall, strange, with warm eyes, and voices that sounded different from her own people. She watched them from the distance, hiding behind walls and shadows. She saw the humans walking in groups, laughing together, carrying food, carrying tools, sometimes helping strangers. She felt curious, but she pushed the feeling away. Because curiosity was dangerous. Curiosity led to pain. One evening, as the twin suns of her world sank below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and purple, she saw something that made her heart freeze. A group of children from the city were pointing at her again, whispering, laughing. She turned and ran, her steps echoing in the empty alleyways. She ran until she reached the old stone bridge that crossed the dark river. There she stopped, breathless, her chest rising and falling fast. She leaned against the broken wall of the bridge, staring into the water below. Her reflection looked back at her, a reflection she hated, a face she wished could vanish. "Why am I even here?" she whispered, though no one could hear her, her voice shaking. "Why did they leave me alone?" Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she thought the river might take her sadness away if she only let herself fall, but she did not fall. She stayed frozen, her small hands gripping the wall tightly, her tears falling into the water like raindrops. She felt weak, broken, and tired. As she stood there, she suddenly heard a sound, soft footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, her eyes wide with fear, and in the fading light she saw a figure, not an alien from her city, but a human. A young human standing a few steps away, watching her quietly. Her heart raced faster, her mind screamed to run, to disappear, to hide. But her feet refused to move. She stood like a cornered animal, shaking, unable to speak. The human did not come closer. He just stood there, his face calm, his eyes gentle. And in that moment she felt something strange. He was not laughing. He was not whispering cruel words. He was simply looking at her, like he understood something she could not explain. The silence between them stretched, like an endless road, her breath quick, his steady. The world around them fading into the sound of the river and the rustle of the evening wind. And then softly, the human spoke, his words simple but filled with meaning. "I know what loneliness feels like," he said. The girl's eyes widened, her chest tightened, and for the first time in years she felt something break inside her. Not from pain, but from the fragile spark of hope, a hope she had long buried. The night air was cold, and the stars began to appear one by one. The orphaned alien girl stood frozen on the bridge, her heart beating fast, her eyes locked on the human who had spoken. She had never heard a stranger speak to her in such a way, not with cruelty, not with laughter, but with a voice soft and calm. She did not answer, she could not. Her throat felt tight, her legs shook. The memory of every cruel whisper from her past told her to run, told her to escape before this stranger. Hurt her too, but something in the way the human stood, the way he did not rush forward, the way he gave her space, made her pause. The human's eyes were steady. They held no judgment, no anger, no laughter, only a quiet sadness, as if he carried his own heavy shadow. He took one step closer, slowly, carefully, like someone trying not to frighten a wounded animal. The girl stepped back quickly, her heel, almost slipping on the edge of the bridge. Fear shot through her chest. She thought he might trap her. She thought he might laugh like the others, but instead, the human lifted his hand slightly, showing his palms. "It's all right," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." His words floated through the air like a promise. But the girl did not trust promises. She had heard promises before. They had always broken. Still, something about his voice made her hesitate. She lowered her eyes to the ground. She wanted to disappear into the shadows, but she also wanted to understand why. This human did not turn away like the others, why he had noticed her at all. The human did not push her. He only stood there, the evening wind moving his dark hair across his forehead. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice gentle. "You don't have to talk to me," he said. "But I saw you." The girl's head lifted slightly, her bright alien eyes shining in the dim light. The words echoed in her chest. "I saw you." No one had ever said that to her without mockery. No one had ever said it like it mattered. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The river below carried its slow, endless song. The sky above deepened into night, and the girl wondered if she should run or stay. Her mind shouted to escape, but her heart whispered something different. The human finally stepped back, giving her even more distance. He did not want her to feel trapped. He reached into a small bag at his side and pulled out a piece of bread, breaking it gently. He placed half of it on the wall of the bridge and kept the other half in his hand. He took a small bite, chewing slowly, then set the rest down in front of him. He was showing her it was safe, showing her he would share. The girl stared at the bread. Her stomach twisted. She had not eaten properly in days. Hunger battled with fear inside her. Her hands shook as she reached forward just a little, then stopped, her chest tight. She looked at the human, waiting for him to laugh, waiting for him to snatch it away, but he did nothing. He only waited, his calm eyes watching her like he had all the time in the universe. At last, she picked up the bread, her thin fingers trembling. She took a small bite, and the taste filled, her mouth with warmth, her eyes watered, not just from hunger but from the strange kindness she felt. The human smiled softly, but not too wide, not too bright, just enough to let her know he was glad. "See," he whispered, "it's safe." The girl did not speak. She only nodded slightly, her voice locked away, but inside her chest a tiny wall cracked. For the first time in years, someone had given her something without asking anything in return. No cruel joke, no sharp words, just a piece of bread and gentle eyes. When the bread was gone, silence returned between them, but it was no longer a heavy silence. It was something softer, something fragile. The human did not stay too long. He seemed to understand that too much at once might frighten her. He stepped back toward the path that led away from the bridge, but before leaving, he spoke again, his words slow and careful. "I'll be here again tomorrow," he said. "If you want to see me." Her heart thumped loudly in her chest. Tomorrow. No one had ever offered her tomorrow before. No one had ever wanted to meet her again. She did not know what to think. She only watched as he walked away, his figure growing smaller until the darkness swallowed him. The girl stood alone once more, the night air cold, the river below endless, but something inside her was different. The emptiness in her chest was not as heavy. The silence in her room later that night did not feel as sharp. She lay on her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying his words again and again. "I know what loneliness feels like. I saw you tomorrow." She did not understand why those words mattered so much, but they did. They pressed against her heart. They refused to leave. For the first time in years, she wondered if maybe she was not completely invisible, if maybe someone truly had noticed her. The night passed slowly, her dreams filled with strange images of the human, his calm eyes, his gentle smile, and though fear still lived in her heart, a new feeling began to grow beside it, a small, fragile hope. And when the first light of dawn entered her room, the girl whispered to herself, barely loud enough for the empty walls to hear. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice shaking but alive. Maybe tomorrow. The next day arrived slowly. The suns rose over the alien city, painting the streets with golden light. People hurried to work. Children laughed in groups. But far away, in a quiet corner, the orphaned alien girl sat by her window, her heart beating fast. She remembered the words from last night. "Tomorrow," he had said. "I'll be here tomorrow." She had not slept much. Fear and hope had fought inside her all night. Part of her wanted to stay hidden, to never go back to that bridge. But another part, small yet powerful, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should see him again. By the time the suns reached their peak, she could not resist anymore. Her legs carried her to the bridge. Slowly, carefully, hiding in the shadows. When she arrived, she froze. The human was there, waiting, as if he truly meant his words. He did not move quickly. He did not call out. He only raised his hand in greeting, his eyes gentle. She hesitated, her feet heavy, but then she took a few small steps forward, not too close, just enough so she could see his face clearly. The human smiled, but today he carried something different. In his arms was a small creature, furry, with bright eyes and a wagging tail. It wriggled in his hold, making tiny sounds. The girl tilted her head in confusion. "This is for you," the human said softly. "A friend." Her heart skipped. She shook her head quickly, her hands raised as if to refuse. No one had ever given her anything before, except insults, except pain. She thought it was a trick. She thought he would laugh at her when she reached out, but the puppy wriggled free from his arms and tumbled onto the ground, its small paws pattering against the stones of the bridge. It ran straight to her, its tail moving so fast it was almost a blur. The girl gasped, stepping back, fear flashing in her eyes. She thought the creature might bite, but instead it jumped playfully, licking her hand, its warm tongue tickling her skin. She froze, completely still, the sensation strange and new. Her heart raced, but not only from fear. Something else rushed through her chest, something she had not felt before. The puppy barked softly, its eyes shining with joy, as if it had already decided she was its person. The girl's hands shook as she slowly touched its fur, soft and warm. For a moment she forgot the voices of the bullies. She forgot the shadows of her room. She forgot her fear. The human watched quietly, not moving closer, letting the moment belong to her. "He likes you," he whispered. "He's yours now." Tears filled the girl's eyes. She could not believe it. She could not understand why. Why would he give her such a gift? Why would he care? She looked at the puppy, then at the human. Her lips trembled. No words came out, but her eyes spoke the feelings she could not say. Gratitude, fear, wonder. The puppy barked again, pulling at her sleeve playfully. She let out a small sound, almost a laugh. Though it was shaky and broken, the human's heart lifted when he heard it. For the first time, she felt the warmth of something alive beside her, something that did not judge, something that did not laugh cruelly. The puppy did not care that she was different. It did not care about her scars, her silence, her strange eyes. It only wanted to stay with her. The human knelt slowly, keeping his distance. "He will protect you," he said gently. "And when you are scared, he will remind you that you are not alone." The girl hugged the puppy tightly against her chest, her tears falling onto its fur. The puppy only licked her face and wagged its tail harder. She wanted to say something, but her voice was locked away, so she only nodded, holding the small creature as if it were the most precious thing in the world. The human stood, watching her with a quiet smile. He did not need her words. He could see in her eyes that the wall around her heart had cracked even more. They stayed there until the suns began to sink. The girl sitting on the edge of the bridge, the puppy in her lap, the human nearby, not too close, not too far, just enough to let her know he was there. When the night came, the human finally rose. "Take him home," he said softly. "He belongs with you now." The girl's chest tightened. She had never taken care of anyone before, not even herself properly. But when she looked down at the puppy, she felt something new, a sense of responsibility, a spark of courage. She nodded again, hugging the puppy as if to promise she would never let it go. The human gave her one last smile, then turned and walked into the shadows, leaving her with her new companion. That night, her empty room was no longer silent. The puppy curled beside her, its tiny breaths warm against her arm. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, but this time her tears were not from pain. They were from something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. She whispered a word, her voice cracking from years of silence. "So soft the puppy barely stirred, friend," she said, and for the first time in her life she smiled in the dark. The alien girl woke to a sound she had never heard inside her room before, a soft whine followed by gentle breathing. The puppy was still curled against her, its small body warm, its tail twitching as it dreamed. For the first time in her memory, the room did not feel like a cage. It felt alive. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. The light of the morning sun spilled across the cracked floor. The puppy yawned, stretched its tiny legs, then climbed into her lap, licking her hands. She laughed softly, a strange, shaky sound because she was not used to laughter. But it slipped out before she could stop it. Her chest felt strange, as if something heavy had been lifted. She stroked the puppy's fur again and again. It did not judge, it did not mock. It only pressed close to her, wanting nothing but love. But when she thought of leaving the room, her heart clenched. Fear rushed back like a cold wave. Outside were the voices, the stares, the laughter. She whispered to herself, I can't," hugging the puppy tightly. Later that day, she heard footsteps outside. Her body froze, but then a gentle knock came at the door. Her breath caught, her eyes wide. No one had ever knocked before. She held the puppy close, its ears perked. Then she heard the human's voice, calm and warm. "It's me," he said softly. "I brought food. And water for him, too." Her heart raced. She wanted to hide, but the puppy barked happily, wagging its tail, running in circles near the door. She hesitated, then slowly, with trembling hands, opened it just enough to peek through. The human stood there with a small bag. He smiled gently, not pushing, not stepping inside. He only held out the bag. "For you both," he said. Her eyes flicked to the bag, then to his face, then back to the floor. Her hands shook as she reached out, taking it quickly, almost dropping it. She mumbled a sound, not a word, just a whisper of breath, then closed the door again. Inside, she opened the bag. There was food, soft bread, fruit, and a small bowl with clean water for the puppy. Her eyes stung with tears. No one had ever brought her food before, not like this, not with kindness. The puppy lapped at the water happily, then ate quickly, wagging its tail. She smiled again, stroking its fur, her chest warm. The next day, the Human returned, and the day after that too, always knocking gently, always waiting, always bringing something small. Sometimes food, sometimes a blanket for the puppy, sometimes nothing but his quiet voice. At first, she only opened the door a little, never letting him see more than her eyes. But slowly, piece by piece, she began to open it wider, letting him stand near the doorway, letting his words fill her small room. She still could not speak much, her voice locked behind years of fear, but sometimes she whispered single words, soft and broken, like thank or yes. Her voice trembled, but the human never rushed her, never laughed. He only listened. One evening he asked, "Would you walk with me, just for a little while with him?" He nodded at the puppy, who barked as if agreeing. Her heart thumped. Loudly she shook her head quickly. "No," she whispered, hugging the puppy close, but the human smiled gently. "Not today. Maybe another time." Days passed. The girl began to wait for the knock. Each time her chest fluttered, fear mixed. With a strange excitement, the puppy grew stronger, more playful, pulling at her sleeves, urging her to move. Finally, one morning, the human asked again, "Just a small step outside, with him. I'll stay by your side." Her hands shook. Her mind screamed no. But the puppy barked happily, tugging toward the door, his tail wagging so fast it seemed he was trying to pull her into the light. She closed her eyes tightly, whispering, "I can't. I can't." But then she felt the puppy press against her, warm and alive. Slowly, trembling, she opened the door wider. The air outside rushed in, cool and sharp. Her body shook, sweat gathered in her palms. But the puppy pulled again, and the human stepped back, giving her space, his voice calm. "Just one step," he said. "You don't have to go far." Her feet felt heavy, but she lifted one slowly. Placing it across the threshold, her chest burned, her heart pounded. But the puppy barked joyfully, wagging its tail, and the human smiled. "You did it," he whispered. Her breath came quick, her knees weak, but she stood there outside, the sun's warm against her face. Her eyes wide, she whispered, outside." Her voice tiny, but it was a voice. The human nodded, his eyes kind. "Yes, outside, and you're safe." She clutched the puppy tightly, the tears streaming down her cheeks. But for the first time, they were not only tears of fear, they were also tears of courage. The puppy barked again, bouncing happily as if celebrating her small victory. That night, when she lay in her room, the puppy curled against her, she whispered to herself, "Step by step," repeating the words the human had said, her voice shaky but filled with a fragile strength. For the first time, she began to believe she might learn to trust. Not all at once, not quickly, but step by step, with the human by her side and the puppy leading her into the light. The morning came bright and loud. The alien city was alive with noise. Merchants shouted from their stalls. Children ran through. The streets, laughter and chatter filled the air. To most, it was an ordinary day. But for the orphaned alien girl, it was the most terrifying day of her life. The human had spoken gently the evening before. His words still echoed in her mind. "You've taken a step outside. Maybe tomorrow we can walk to the market together. You don't have to talk, you don't have to stay long, just walk with him and with me." She had not answered. Fear had closed her throat. But deep inside, she knew the human's eyes carried no lies, and the puppy, her new companion, barked happily as if he understood everything, as if he wanted her to be brave. Now, standing at her door, her knees trembled, her hands shook as she held the puppy close. The human stood a few steps, away, waiting, not rushing, his calm presence steady like a quiet anchor. "You don't have to do it," he said softly. "But if you try, I'll be right here." The girl looked down at the puppy, its tail wagging so fast, its eyes filled with trust. It tugged gently at her sleeve, urging her forward. Her heart raced, her chest tight. But she nodded once, a small motion, and together they began to walk. The streets were wide and filled with color, but to her they felt narrow, crushing. Every sound too loud, every movement too sharp. She clutched the puppy. Her eyes darting left and right, shadows of her past voices rose in her mind. Laughter, whispers, cruel names. She wanted to run back. Her body screamed to hide, but the human's voice reached her, steady, calm. Breathe, step by step, just like before. She took a shaky breath, her steps heavy, but the puppy trotted, proudly leading the way, its tail high, its bark cheerful as if nothing in the world could hurt them. They reached the edge of the market, and the noise grew louder, stalls covered in bright cloths, fruits and spices filling the air with sharp scents. The girl's chest tightened, her hands shook. She clutched the puppy closer. Eyes began to turn toward her. People paused in their shopping. Whispers rippled like waves. She felt the weight of their stares. The old fear returned. The memory of stones and cruel laughter pressed against her mind. Her breathing quickened. She almost turned to flee, but then the puppy barked, jumping from her arms to the ground. It ran in circles, wagging its tail. The crowd's attention shifted. Their eyes softened. Laughter rose, not cruel but warm. "Look at that little one," someone said, smiling. "So full of energy." Another laughed. A small child stepped forward, her eyes bright with wonder. She looked up at the alien girl, then down at the puppy. "Can I pet him?" she asked softly. The girl froze, her chest tight. Fear burned inside her, but the child waited patiently, her hand hovering. The puppy barked happily and ran to the child, licking her fingers. The crowd chuckled gently. The girl's eyes widened. She had expected cruel laughter, but instead she heard joy. She saw smiles. The puppy had turned their whispers into warmth. She felt something shift inside her chest. The human leaned close, whispering gently, "See, they are not all against you. Not everyone laughs at pain. Some only laugh at joy." Tears filled her eyes, but she stood a little straighter. Her trembling eased just enough for her to take a breath. The child giggled, petting the puppy. "He's so soft," the child said, then looked up at her again. "He's lucky to have you." The words struck deep. Lucky to have you. She had never been told such a thing. She had always been told the opposite. Cursed, unwanted, unlucky. But here, in the middle of the market, a child said she was something good. She swallowed hard, her lips trembled, and then, in the smallest voice, she whispered, "Yes." It was barely louder than a breath, but it was her voice alive, spoken in front of others. The human smiled softly, pride shining in his eyes. More people gathered, not with cruelty, but with curiosity, asking about the puppy, smiling at its playfulness, and while the girl's fear still lived inside her, she realized she was not running. She was standing in the open, her feet steady on the ground. The market no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a place where she could exist, even if only for a moment. When the suns began to set, the human guided her back gently, never rushing, never forcing. The crowd faded behind them. The puppy walked proudly at her side, its tail high, its ears alert. Back at her room, she sat on the floor, hugging the puppy, her tears falling freely, but her lips curved into a small, fragile smile. She whispered to the puppy, "We did it." Her voice shaking, but alive. The puppy barked happily, licking her face. The human watched quietly, knowing that today she had faced her greatest fear. Not fully, not perfectly, but bravely. For the first time in her life, the girl had stood in the crowd, and she had not. Broken, she had not disappeared. She had been seen, and this time she was not hated. This was only the beginning, but it was enough to change everything. The market day had passed, and the girl sat in her small room, the puppy curled against her, the human nearby sitting on the cracked floor instead of a chair, as if to show he belonged in her world too. The room felt less empty, less cold, but inside her chest something heavy stirred. That night the human spoke softly. "You were brave today," he said. "You faced them, even though you were afraid." His eyes kind, his smile gentle. The girl lowered her gaze, her fingers tangled in the puppy's fur, her lips pressed tightly, her heart heavy. brave. She wanted to believe that, but the voices of the past screamed louder in her memory. She shook her head, tears rising. Not brave, she whispered, her voice breaking. The human tilted his head, waiting, not pushing, his silence telling her she could speak if she wished. The puppy whined softly, pressing its warm body closer, encouraging her. The girl closed her eyes, her hands shaking, and then the memories spilled out. They hated me, she whispered, her voice trembling. When I was small, the others in the city, the children, they laughed. They called me cursed, different, wrong. Her tears slid down her cheeks. They chased me, they threw stones, they told me to disappear. Her shoulders shook, her breath came uneven. The words broke free like a storm long locked inside. I tried to talk once. I tried to make friends, but they pushed me away. They said I was not one of them. They said my parents left me because I was broken. Her voice cracked on the last word. Broken, she had carried it for years, believing it, letting it bury her. The human's heart ached as he listened. He did not interrupt. He did not tell her to stop. He let her pour out the pain. His eyes, filled with sadness but also with quiet strength. I hid, she whispered. I stayed in the dark because it was safer. No one could hurt me if they couldn't see me. Her hands tightened on the puppy's fur, but the voices never left. They still follow me. Every time I hear laughter, I think it's about me. Every time I see eyes on me, I feel small, worthless. Her tears fell onto the puppy, but the little creature only licked her hands, wagging its tail softly, refusing to let her sink into despair alone. The human finally spoke, his voice low and steady. They were wrong, he said firmly. You are not broken. You are not cursed. The girl shook her head, unable to believe. But why? She whispered. Why did they all hate me? Because fear makes people cruel, the human said. When someone is different, weaker, alone, others sometimes attack, not because of truth, but because of their own emptiness. His voice held no anger, only quiet knowledge. I know because it happened to me too. The girl's eyes widened, her tears paused. She looked at him, confused. You, she whispered, her voice almost a question. He nodded slowly. Yes, when I was younger, I was different from others too. I did not fit. I was called names. I was made to feel small. His eyes softened. But I learned, pain does not mean truth. Cruelty does not mean you are worthless. Her breath shook. His words wrapped around her heart, fragile and strange. She had never heard such things before. You survived, he continued. And that means you are strong. Stronger than anyone. Who mocked you, his voice steady. The past does not decide your worth, you do. The girl's chest tightened. Her tears flowed again. But this time they were different. Not only pain, but something else, a trembling hope. The puppy barked suddenly as if agreeing, its tail wagging fast, pressing its head against her chest. She laughed softly through tears, the sound broken but real. The human leaned closer, his voice gentle. Say it with me just once, say, I am not broken. Her lips trembled, fear held her tongue, but the puppy nudged her. The human's eyes stayed steady, waiting. She closed her eyes, her breath shaky, then whispered, I am not broken. Her voice was weak, uncertain, but it was there, alive, spoken aloud. The human smiled softly. Again, he said. This time her voice grew a little stronger. I am not broken. The room felt lighter, her chest heavy but releasing. The walls of silence she had carried for years began to crack piece by piece. The human nodded, pride in his eyes. Good. Remember that. Every time the past whispers lies, you tell it the truth. She wiped her tears, hugging the puppy close, her hands still trembling, but her heart beating with a new rhythm. The night stretched on, but she did not feel so alone. The human stayed near. The puppy curled against her, and for the first time she felt her past could be faced. Not ignored, not erased, but faced. As sleep began to pull at her eyes, she whispered into the darkness, her voice quiet but steady. I want to live. The human heard and his chest tightened with emotion. He whispered back, "Then we will make sure you do, not just live, but truly live." The puppy barked softly, as if sealing the promise, and, in that moment, the girl's dark past no longer felt like chains. It was still heavy, still painful, but with the human and the puppy beside her, she felt for the first time that she might rise above it. The suns rose over the alien city, their light spilling across the rooftops, painting the streets in soft gold. For most people, it was just another day, a day of trade, laughter, and work. But for the orphaned alien girl, this day was different. Today would test everything she had learned, everything she had faced. She stood in front of the cracked mirror in her small room, the puppy at her feet, wagging its tail, the human waiting quietly by the door, his eyes calm but filled with quiet encouragement. She smoothed the old cloth of her dress, her hands trembling. "You don't have to do this," the human said softly. "But if you choose to, you won't be alone." The girl swallowed. Her chest tight, she looked down at the puppy, who barked happily as if to say, "Yes, go, try." Her lips trembled, but she nodded slowly. For weeks, the human had guided her, step by step, from her room to the bridge, from the bridge to the market, from the market to the edge of the plaza. Each time her fear rose like a storm. But each time, the puppy and the human stood with her, and she did not fall. Now she was about to take her biggest step yet, to stand before others, not hiding, not running, but speaking. The plaza was already filling with people, merchants setting up stalls, children chasing one another, voices rising like a tide. The girl's stomach twisted, her palms sweaty, her chest heavy. She clutched the puppy close as they walked, her steps slow, her eyes darting. Every laugh felt sharp, every glance felt heavy. But the human's voice anchored her. "Breathe step by step. You're not broken. Remember that." When they reached the center of the plaza, the human stopped, turning to her, his voice calm. "You can leave if you want, but if you stay, maybe you can show them who you are." Her heart pounded. She wanted to run. But then the puppy barked, loudly, drawing the crowd's attention. People turned, their eyes falling on her. Whispers began. Fear rushed up. Her knees shook. The old voices screamed in her head. Cursed, different, unwanted. Her chest tightened. She almost turned to flee. But then a child stepped forward. The same child from the market, her eyes bright, her smile warm. "It's the puppy girl," she said, laughter in her voice, but it was gentle, full of joy, not cruelty. The crowd softened. People smiled. Some laughed lightly, not at her, but at the playful puppy wagging its tail, running in circles. The girl clutched the puppy, her tears stinging, her lips trembling. And then, in the smallest voice, she spoke. "My name," she whispered, her voice breaking. "My name is Lyra." Tew. Crowd went silent for a moment, then the child smiled wider. "Lyra," she repeated as if the name was precious. Others nodded, whispering it softly. Lyra, not cursed, not orphan, but a name. Her name. The human's eyes shone with pride, his voice low, meant only for her. "See, they can know you, not as a shadow, but as yourself." Her chest lifted, shaky but strong. She looked at the crowd, her fear still alive but no longer stronger than her will. She whispered again, louder this time. "I am not broken." The words carried through the plaza, fragile but powerful. People listened, some nodded, some smiled. The child clapped softly, and the puppy barked, jumping happily. The crowd began to cheer gently, not in mockery but in support, and for the first time in her life, Lyra stood before them, seen, heard, not as cursed, not as unwanted, but as herself. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not hide them. She stood taller, her puppy beside her, the human a steady presence at her back. As the suns moved higher, people came forward, asking to pet the puppy, smiling, talking, and though fear still lingered, Lyra found her voice, shaky but real. She answered one word then another, building slowly, step by step. By evening, when the plaza grew quiet, she walked home with the human and the puppy, her body tired but her heart full. The silence of her room no longer felt like prison walls. It felt like a place of rest, because she knew tomorrow would not be the same as yesterday. That night, lying beside the puppy, she whispered into the darkness, "I am alive, I am Lyra, I am not broken." Her voice clear, strong, and the puppy barked in agreement. The human smiled, hearing her words, and in his heart he knew she had taken her first steps into a new beginning. No longer just the lonely orphan, no longer the cursed girl. She was Lyra, the girl who had faced her fears, the girl who had found trust, friendship, and hope, and all of it had begun with one human and one puppy.